How many of you, when the new year started, you're a goal setter? You set some goals. Maybe you call them resolutions, call them whatever you want. Anybody in here, you like setting goals? Anybody do that? Anybody? Okay, a few people did that. All right, sweet. How many of you have already blown your New Year's goals already? Like they're already out the window. Like you're like, oh man, I blew it already. All right, a couple of you. How many are like, man, what's a goal? Forget that goal stuff. I'm not into that. My whole life is a goal. Like that's it. Like I love this time of year because, you know, it is a good opportunity for all of us to kind of say, you know, what are some things from the prior year that I didn't really like? And what are some things that I'd like to change? What are some things that I'd like to talk about and think about? And how can I move forward in some areas of my life that I think need to get better in? I need to get better in. And last week, if you were with us, we talked about moving forward from some things from our past. We talked about moving forward into the plans and destiny that God has for you. We talked about moving forward past our old history, our old habits, and our old hurts. And it was I thought it was a great message. But I was thinking about it afterwards, and I started to think about today's message. You know, I'm always thinking ahead. And I think God dropped a word in my spirit for today's message. And it's the word fight. It's the word fight. Now that may seem a little aggressive for you today. You're like, wow, I'm going to church and we're talking about fighting. Like what is Fight Club? What's going on? Like, I don't know about this, Pastor. But what I mean by that is that anytime that you make a decision to move forward in your life, to move forward towards God, to move forward towards the plans and purposes of his word, to move forward in some areas that you're kind of sick and tired of, you know, to make good decisions, all of those things. Anytime that you are making a decision to move forward in your life, there is always going to be a fight or a battle that happens. Like there's always going to be a moment of resistance that comes at you. And sometimes it shocks us. We're like, what are you talking? Why? This is supposed to be easy. Like I'm making a decision to do good things for the Lord. And then all of a sudden, I feel like I got a big target on my back and all these bad things start happening. There's always going to be a moment of time where we say, hey, I want to move forward, but then resistance will come all the time. Maybe at some point of your life, maybe at the beginning of the year, maybe at a different time of your life, you said, I want to set some goals. Like I want to look at my life and take inventory. I want to see some things. I want to change. And maybe you wrote down some goals at one point or another in your life. Maybe you got a notebook out, your iPhone, something, you're like typing away. And you're like, okay, what are some goals I want to see happen in my life? And maybe, you know, you had a goals like, I want to get closer to God this year. I want to wake up early in the morning. I want to spend time praying. I want to spend time reading God's word. Like that's a good goal to have. So maybe you wrote that down. Maybe you even had a highlighter out and you're highlighting it a little bit, you know, like this is a goal I'm going to have this year. And maybe the second goal you had, if you're married in this place, you're like, you know, I think I need more, we need more date nights. Come on, married people, we need more date nights in the house. Let's do some more date nights. So I wrote that one down. Maybe that's a blue highlighter this time. I don't know, changing it up. That's another goal I have. And then maybe the third goal you wrote down at some point maybe was I want to eat better. I want to go to the gym. I want to exercise. I want to do something of that nature. You know, I want to be healthier. But then what happens? Well, life happens, right? Come on, somebody. Life happens, and then you're like, oh my goodness, I had these goals, I had these ideas, but now life is happening, and all my goals are out the window. It's like, oh my goodness, I want to do some things, I want to get up early, spend time with God, but then your alarm clock goes off, and you start rebuking your alarm clock in Jesus' name. You're like, how dare you come against me at 5:30 in the morning, 6 a.m., go back to the demons, hell that you came from, alarm clock. Maybe you're weird, I don't know, like me, but we can all right, I'm not going to do that. Or maybe you want to get some date nights, you know, you want to take your spouse out, but you can't even find a decent babysitter that even likes kids. You know, you're like, do I leave with this person? I don't know. They might not come back. I don't know. I don't know. They're on their phone the whole time. Are they really going to watch my kids? I don't feel safe. And so you don't get a babysitter. Or maybe you're like, I want to eat right. I want to eat right. It's a good goal. But then like in January, it's like everybody's birthday for some reason, and everybody's bringing donuts and cake into work, and you're like, they're tempting me, get behind me, Satan, and then I can't do this. And then I love that donut with the sprinkles and the chocolate frosting on it. Like, oh, are you serious? And then like, it's always an opportunity for something when you say, hey, I want to move forward in some things. There's always going to be a moment of resistance. There's always going to be something that comes against you. Let me just encourage you today, though, and let you know that the fight and the battle that we are up against is a spiritual battle. Anytime that you want to make a decision to make right choices, to move closer to the Lord, to move closer to the plans and destiny that he has for you, there's always going to be resistance, and it's always a spiritual battle that you are facing. And so today I want to talk to you about a few things that I think can come against us, some battles that we need to be ready for. We need to be ready to fight because they're going to come at us no matter what. And it's important for us to be ready when the battles come. So in 1 Samuel chapter 17, I want to read to you a very, very famous story in the Bible. If you've been in church at any point in your life, or even if you've never gone to church, you've heard the story of David and Goliath. Like they talk about it at sporting events at times when an underdog team goes against a powerhouse or things like that. Like you've heard the story of David and Goliath, but I want to talk today about a part of the story that kind of led up to the battle that we don't really talk a lot about. Maybe we don't really know a little bit about the foreground before the actual battle took place. You know, before the big fight, you know, there was this two nations, the nation of Israel, God's armies was going up against this other nation called the Philistines. And every day they would go out to the battlefields and the two armies would kind of come out and they would kind of have a stare down against each other. But then eventually the Philistines champion by a guy named Goliath, he was this giant, this tall man, very big, and he would come out and he would taunt the armies of God. He would constantly make fun of, he would mock. Every single day he would do this. And so here's where we're going to start the story in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 12. It'll be on the screen, but it says this. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judea. Jesse had 8 sons. 8 sons. Come on, moms. Like 8 sons? Really? Bless that mama somewhere. Okay. And in Saul's time, he was very old. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul, that's King Saul, to war. The firstborn was Eliab, the second was Abinadab, and the third was Shammah. I like that name. Shammah, I don't know, I just think that's a fun name. If you're looking for a name for your kid, that's a good one. Okay. Verse 14, it says, David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend to his father's sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and every evening and took his stand. So think about this for a moment. 40 days, morning and night, this giant came out from the battle lines, came out from the Philistine camp and would mock the armies of God. He would taunt them. He would tell them, you guys think you serve God? Well, if you serve, your God is so great, well, come on with it. Like, bring it. Like, I'm ready. Like, you guys are hiding. You guys are weak. You guys are nothing. And for 40 days, this went on and on and on. And as I read this, you know, sometimes you read a story that you've read a million times. And sometimes as you read it, some new things pop up from time to time. And I thought to myself, you know, after 40 days, nobody stood up and said, you know what, enough is enough. You know, like for 40 days, everybody just hid and they were scared of this guy, Goliath. And I get it, he's a big dude. But for 40 days, you would think eventually, I mean, somebody would say, all right, enough's enough. I'm going to shut this guy up. Like, are you really? Like, this guy continues to come out here every day and taunt us and make fun of our God. Like, I can't put up with that anymore. But for 40 days, they put up with it. They just kept putting up with it. And when I was thinking about this, it's amazing how sometimes, even in our own life, how we can put up with things, or what I would say, even get comfortable with things that actually God is calling us to have victory over. What do I mean by that is sometimes there can be some dysfunctional areas in our life, some things that, you know what, like no, you're supposed to have victory over this. But at the same time, we can see and hear the enemy's taunts over our lives, and it can just become normal to us. Well, I guess that's just how I'm always gonna be. I guess this is just the way it is. And we lose our fight from inside of us. We lose something on the inside. I think it's so interesting because I think about it. Could you imagine maybe on the first couple of days that Goliath came out and started taunting the people of God, God's armies, like maybe they were in shock. Maybe they're like, man, look how big he is. Oh my goodness. Man, he's scary. He don't brush his teeth or nothing. Look at him. Like, he's a scary dude. Like, I could see that. But maybe after 10 days, maybe 15 days, maybe they're like, man, I'm sick of hearing this guy keep taunting us and making fun of our God and telling us we're nothing. But then like after 20, 30 days, like I bet you they just got used to it. Oh, there's old Goliath again. Look at him. He's out there. Oh, let's all run and hide. Like, he's scary. But, morning and evening, same thing over and over and over again. And they got used to something. They started living with something that God was actually calling them to have victory over in their life. And that can happen for us. We can get used to some things in our lives, and we think this is how it's never gonna change. So this is just who I am. This is just my lot in life. This is just it. And I don't know what it is for us. So sometimes it can be, well, my marriage is just always gonna be bad. You know what? We just gotta raise these kids, and then after the kids are out of high school, then we can separate. But our marriage is always gonna be bad. That's just the way it is. My finances are always gonna be a wreck. It's just, I'm not good at budgeting. I've tried a budget. I can't keep a budget. I'm just gonna live paycheck to paycheck. That's just how it is. I'm always gonna be insecure. I just have these insecurities. I can't deal with them. That's just the way they are. I'm always gonna be unhealthy. That's just it. Like, I'm always gonna be depressed. I'm always gonna have anxiety. I mean, you can fill in the blank today, just where we can sometimes get used to something where God is actually calling us to have victory in. We can begin to just live with things that God's saying, no. I've got more for you. Think about it. For 40 days, he taunted, and nobody said anything until David arrived. Nobody said, they just hid. They put up with it. And what I was thinking today, I said, you know what? My hope and my prayer today for that somebody in this room, that you would start to get a little bit of your fight back on the inside. That you would start to get a little bit of your fight back, and where there would be something that rises up inside of you that says, okay, guess what? Enough is enough. Enough is enough. This has gone on long enough, and I'm not gonna put up with this any longer. There's a fight that's rising up on the inside of me, and it's a spiritual fight. Like, I think there's something very spiritual about saying, I got a little fight inside of me. I'm not gonna just lie down and let this just happen. I got a little fight inside of me that I believe that God's gonna do something great. Now, I'm not talking about being arrogant or being anything like that. I'm talking about having a confidence in knowing that, man, I serve the living God. That I serve Jesus Christ. He is my Lord and my Savior. He is the creator of the heavens and the earth. There is none like him. I'm a child of God, and guess what? Whatever comes at me, man, he's with me. And where something rises up inside of you that says, all right, enough is enough. And so David says, okay, I'm gonna go visit my brothers. My dad's asked me to do this. He goes and visits his brothers. He takes them some food, some home-cooked meal, some stuff for the brothers. And he gets there, and in verse 20, it says this. Early in the morning, David left the flock in the care of a shepherd, loaded up, and set out as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle position, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines, and asked his brother how they were. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. And David heard it. I love that. David heard it. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. Now the Israelites had been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give his daughter in marriage and will exempt his family from taxes in Israel. Come on, somebody, like that's a good, no taxes? You can keep your daughter. Give me no taxes. And he says this in verse 26, David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, this is what will be done for the man who kills him. When Eliab, verse 28, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. I love David's reply. Now what have I done? Can't I even speak? He's such a younger brother. He's the youngest, you can tell. He's like, man, what have I done now? I can't even talk. Like, are you serious right now? He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter. And the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to the king Saul. And Saul sent for him. I love David's attitude here. I love his attitude here. David sees this giant taunting the armies of the living God. And instead of running and hiding like all the other trained soldiers, this boy says, wait. Like, who does this guy think that he is? Like, he's coming out to us and charging us and mocking us and taunting us and saying all these horrible things. Doesn't he know that we serve the one true God? Doesn't he know that we serve the living God? Are you serious right now? It was so funny. The other night we were sitting down at the table for dinner, my family, my 2 kids and my wife and I. And we always do this thing where we kind of go around the circle and we say, all right, give me some highs and lows for the day. What's the high moment for the day? What's the low moment for the day? And my daughter, when it was her turn, she said, well, one of her low moments was that there's a boy in her class, she's in 2nd grade, keeps calling her names. And my son, who is 2 grades ahead of her, 10 years old, he said, wait, what? He's calling you names? What's his name? Like next time we get to school, you point him out to me. Doesn't he know who your brother is? Like, doesn't he know? Like, I got your back. And I was like, well, son, he's in 2nd grade. Before we go all WrestleMania on him, hang on a second. Like, let's let the teacher know. Like, you don't have to elbow drop anybody right now. Like, just hang on a second. Like, I love his attitude though, that he's like, man, don't I got your back. Doesn't he know that you're my sister? And I think there's something inside of each and every single one of us that when a giant pops up in your life, and what I mean by that is something that's overwhelming, something that's bigger than what you can handle on your own, something that you think, where did this come from? Something that makes you want to sometimes go run and hide. That when those moments come at you, and they're spiritual, remember, that we say, wait, who do you think you are? Don't you know that I serve the living God? Like, don't you know who my daddy is? Like, don't you know that God is with me? He's not against me. Like I serve a great God. And I know you're trying to come against me right now and stop me and show resistance to me. But listen, I've got a really big God and he is for me, not against. And I'm going to go through this situation no matter what it looks like right now. Like, there's something, we got to get a little fight inside of us as believers and as Jesus followers, and stop letting the world and life just walk all over us, but say, God, what are you calling me to do? God, what are you speaking into me about? And when these obstacles come my way, I'm not just gonna lay down any longer. I got a little fight going on inside of me. I'm gonna fight spiritually back against whatever the enemy is trying to throw at me. So here's the deal though. I wanna give you a few things this morning, like I said, that I believe will come against you whenever you are in a battle and whenever you decide to move forward in your life. I think it's interesting that as soon as David says, hey, I'm gonna take a stand. When David says enough is enough, and he makes a stand and say, I'm gonna do something about this. It's interesting because right when he says that, that's when resistance comes. When you make a choice to say, I'm gonna move forward. When you make a choice to say, I wanna change something about my life. I wanna go in a direction that God has for me. That's when resistance always comes. And so the first place that I always see, and you see in the scriptures here, that resistance will always come. Number one, if you're taking notes, I wrote it down this way. There's always gonna be the critics that try to come against you. There's always gonna be the critics. What's interesting to me is that the number one critic came from inside David's family. I mean, like, you can expect it maybe from the outside at times in your life, but like, it's kind of unexpected sometimes when it comes from inside your family. It's like, wait, you're supposed to love me, you're supposed to be behind me, you're supposed to support me, and like, you are coming against me saying my motives are wrong, and that I'm just here to watch the fight. Like, are you serious right now? Like, what are you talking about? And there will always be a critic that will come against you and say, hey, you're doing it, your motives are wrong. Who are you? What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you trying to change that? You're fine how you are. Like, there's always gonna be a critic that comes against you. And what critics try to do, they try to take you off track, the track that God has for you. They want you to question everything that's going on right now, and to the point where you're like, did I hear from God? Is this God, or is this the pizza I ate last night? Like, what's going on right now? Like, is this really what God would have me to do? And critics want you to stay the same. They want you to keep the routine. And when you really start taking your faith seriously, and you really say, I want to get involved in church maybe, and maybe connect in a city group and get on a team and start growing spiritually, the critics want you to go back to the old you all the time. They're like, I don't know if I like the new you. Like, you're really passionate about Jesus now in the church, and that's not you. Like, who are you? Like, can't we just go back to this old you, because that makes me more comfortable? What I found so often is that the critics will always want you to be somebody that makes them comfortable, not who makes you comfortable, because the comfortable that God has for you is out in front of you and as you walk forward in it, and the critics always want you to go back to the old you. It was interesting too, because about 10 years ago when my son was born, when I held that boy, that little baby in my hand for the very first time, I mean, if you're a parent in this place, man, it changes you. Like, I don't care what you say, like when you hold that little boy or your little girl in your hand for the very first time, it just changes you. And I started really rethinking about my life, how I focus my life, how I schedule my life. And I said, man, I want to be there at every waking moment for this kid if I can. Like, my dad wasn't around a lot, so I'm like, I want to be there for my kid as much as I can. And one of the things that I just felt like God speak to me on was like I love golf. I'm a big golfer. If you want to bless your pastor, give me a golf ball. Like, I just love golf. I think golf is so much fun. I enjoy it. But I was in a golf league, and then it took a lot of my time. I'd go to work, hit the golf league, and a couple of nights a week sometimes, and I'd be out late golfing. Then we'd go out to dinner afterwards. I wouldn't get home till like 9, 10 o'clock, and I said, you know what? When I get home from work, I'm done with work, I want to come home. I want to see my kid. I want to play with him, even though he's spitting up all over the place right now. Like I want to be there. I don't want to miss these moments. And so I decided that I'm going to quit the golf league. And it blew me away that sometimes some of my biggest resistance came from my close friends. What do you mean you're quitting the league? Like, this is our tradition. Like, this is our time. Like, what are you doing? Why would you do this? This is our moment. We have fun together. Like, listen, guys, I love you. I'm sorry, but this is just something that I feel like I need to do. Like I said, my dad wasn't around a lot for me when I was younger. I want to make sure I'm there for him. Like, well, he's only like 2 months old. He's not going to miss you. And it's like, yeah, he may be 2 months old, but he's only going to be 2 months old one time. And I want to be there for every moment that I can be there for. And I said, listen, guys, I love you. I know that you don't like this decision I've made, but I'm saying no to something right now because I'm saying yes to something else that has more of importance in my life right now and my focus right now. So I hope you understand. But still, the comments that would come sometimes were like, wow, this hurts a little bit. Oh, remember when we used to hang out? Remember when we used to, go play golf together? Oh man, we had so much fun the other night. Sorry, you weren't there. Like they would say some things to make me want to cave on a decision that I made to go back to the old me. And I said, listen, I can't do that. I've made a decision. I'm going to go forward in it. And it's amazing how sometimes in life, when you are trying to make a right choice, there will be some people that come along that are critics that will try to get you to go back to the old you. That's what I've learned in my life, is that I have learned that what voices actually have weight in my life. It's a great question to ask yourself from time to time. What are the voices that actually carry weight in my life? What are the ones that I'm really listening to? Like all the voices around me are nice, but not all of them should carry the same weight, okay? For instance, like let's just pretend you're saying, I want to get out of financial debt. I want to save money. I want to stop living paycheck to paycheck. I want to have a 401k one day. All those things, Let's say that's something that you have a goal in your life you want to do. You don't want to take the advice from somebody who is in mounds of financial debt, who lives paycheck to paycheck. Like, you don't want to let that voice determine the direction that you're going. If they try to say, this is the financial advice you need, like that's nice. You can smile at them a little bit, and say, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But that voice should not carry the weight that somebody else who say, listen, I've done this. I've been where you are. Look how the hard work was, and I got out of that situation. Like, that's the voice you want to listen to. It's kind of like if you're in a marriage, you're like, man, I want to have a great marriage one day. Like, the voice that's going to carry a lot of weight for me is that person who's been married 40, 50, 60 years, and they still love each other more today than they did yesterday. Like they are still in love. They've had some kids. They've been through some ups and downs. They've gone through some stuff, but man, they love God. They love each other. Like that, their voice is going to carry a lot of weight in my life, because I want to lean in and listen. How'd you do this? How did this work out for you? Because your life is proof that this stuff actually works, and I need to lean in. So there's going to be moments in our life where you got to tune out the critic, and you got to tune in and lean into the coach in your life, the person who loves you, the person who loves God and is not afraid to tell you the truth, not to hurt you, but to help you. Say, okay, wow, what do I need to fix here? What do I need to apply to my life here? Just because there are a lot of voices speaking to you doesn't mean that we always need to be receiving those. You got to learn to weigh the voices in our life. Going back to our story, verse 32, David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. Saul replied, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man. You're just a boy. Are you serious? He goes, and he's been a warrior from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it. I struck it. I rescued the sheep from its mouth, and when it turned on me, and you better not turn on me, he said, I seized it by its hair and struck it and killed it. I was like, wow, it's amazing. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defiled the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go and the Lord be with you. I love that. Saul's like, I don't know what to say. Just go and let the Lord be with you. How do you respond to that? I love that. It's so good. But the number 2 fight that we're going to come against when you're trying to move forward in your life is the fight, what I call, for your identity. The fight for your identity. What I mean by that is that Saul looked at David and said, you're just a young man. You're just a boy. There's no way that you could do this. There's no way that you could fight this guy. And if we're not careful, we will start to listen to the internal dialogue of ourself and our life about who we think we are, or who we think maybe other people have spoken over us. If we're not careful, we'll start to think of ourselves as, I'm just you fill in the blank. I'm just a whatever. I'm just this, I'm just that. I could never move forward in this area. I could never do that. I don't have the abilities. I don't have this. I don't have that. I am just this. And we can always come back to what I call the lowest common denominator of our life. Like when you think about yourself, you say, I'm only just you fill in the blank. A lot of times what I found I do, and maybe you do it too, is that we pick the weakest point of our life, never the strongest. It's like we say, oh, I'm just a whatever. I'm just a, single mom. I'm just a divorced person. I'm just a person with depression. I'm just a person that struggles with anxiety. I'm just a person that's financially ruined. I'm just, whatever your blank is, we always go to the lowest common denominator of ourselves, and we begin to see our life and ourselves through that lens. Well, I'm just this. But we never say, wait a second, who am I really through Christ? How does God see me? How does God see my life? And who am I in Christ? Well, if you're a Jesus follower in this place today, the Bible is really clear of who you are. You're a child of God. You are completely forgiven. You are highly favored. You are completely loved. You are blessed. You are fully equipped to do whatever God has called you to do. Like you got some stuff. You are somebody. And we got to stop looking at ourselves through the lens of our insecurities and our weaknesses and start looking at our lives through the lens of who God says that we are. I love it because David responds and he's like, hey, King, sorry, you're only seeing one side of me. He's like, yes, I'm a young man, but I'm also a son. And actually, I'm also a shepherd. And guess what? I'm also a lion killer. And guess what? I'm also a bear killer. Guess what? I'm also a fighter. And so I know you only see me as a young man right now, but there's more that meets the eye that you're looking at right now. Like there's more going on here than what you think. And I love it because David says, I'm not who you say I am. I'm who God says that I am. And you got to come back to a moment where we stop looking at ourselves through the lens of our history, the lens of our insecurities and our faults, and come back to the point where we say, okay, who am I in Christ? And when you are confident in who you are, then you'll be confident in what God has called you to do. And then in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 38, it says this. It says, then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. Have you ever worn someone else's clothes? I don't like it. That's not for me. You can do it, but I can't do that. He put on a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I'm not used to them. So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, I love it, he approached the Philistine. And if you know the rest of the story, David got out his sling. They had a few words back and forth. He put that rock in his sling and he began to just get ready to fire when ready. And I love it because historians even say that David was what they would call a slinger. And there were swordsmen, infantry guys, but then there were slingers back then, kind of like the archery. And historians would say that when a skilled slinger, which David was, that when they released that sling and that rock, it was the equivalent of somebody shooting a gun at somebody. And so I love it because when people say, oh, it's the underdog story, I'm like, David was never an underdog. I'm sorry. He said, I know who I am. I know what God has called me to be. And I'm going to stand back here and I'm going to sling it. He goes, and I'm going to take this dude out. And that's what happened. He took out this giant and the armies of God had this amazing victory. And this young boy, defeated this trained giant, this amazing story that we talk about today. But here's the third thing that I think will come against us when we try to move forward in our life. And it's what I'm calling just simply comparison. The battle of comparison. Because here's the deal. Saul wanted David to put on his clothes. Saul wanted David to wear his sword. Saul wanted David to dress and be somebody that David was not. And David very quickly realized, that's not me. That's not me. And I think sometimes what happens in life is as we try to move forward, we can look at other people and how they're running their race and what they're doing in their relationship with God and whatever else. And we can say, that's what I want. That's what I need to do. That's how I need to get things ready, how I need to prepare my life. And what happens a lot of times is it's not who God's called us to be, who God's called you to be specifically. And so we try to emulate, we try to be somebody we're not, and then we get frustrated because it's not us. And we fail, and we're like, see, these goals moving forward, all this stuff is hogwash. I can't do it. This is just who I am. I got to go back to my old self because I just can't move forward because it didn't work for me. Well, maybe it's because you were trying to be somebody that God never called you to be. Maybe you were trying to be somebody else, and God's saying, no, I've called you to be you. I've called you, and I've given you specific gifts and talents and unique abilities for the things that are going to be facing you in your life. Like, don't be somebody else. Be the person that God has called you to be. And you'll be so surprised that in the person that God has created you, uniquely created you. The Bible says that while you were in your mother's womb, he was knitting you together, putting all your parts together, your personality, your traits, all your temperaments, everything together. God was working on you. You are his masterpiece. The Bible says like he was doing a work in your mama's belly. It's great, but he's putting you together so you would understand that you're called to be who God's called you to be. And to walk in the freedom to know that, man, God has uniquely gifted me, give me talents. And this is why I see things that way. And this is why I do this way. And it's all to give glory to God. Like I can take all of my gifts, all of my talents, and it's because God has a plan out in front of me. He wants me to do something on this planet. And I can realize that, man, God has something for me to do. That's why we talk about our growth track so much. And we encourage you to jump in that. I know a lot of you have done that and have grown and seen how God has uniquely designed you. We say around here, your design reveals your destiny. The growth track's not an end-all, be-all, but it begins to point you in a direction where you can say, okay, here's where I'm gifted. Here's where I'm talented. Maybe this is a step I need to take. Maybe this is a direction I can head in because I know that this is how I'm created. And there's a destiny out in front of me, and I can walk in that. Here's the deal. Be the person who God's created you to be. Don't be somebody else. That person's already taken. Be you. Be the person that God has created you to be and find freedom in knowing that he's created you with purpose. He didn't mess you up. You don't see things that way. You're not a mistake. Come on. God has created you to be the person that you are, to make a difference in this world for him. So this year, as we go forward in this year, 2020, let's be people who are not shocked when the battles come. Let's not be shocked when the resistance comes, but say, you know what, man, I'm ready for any giant that pops up into my life because I know who I am, I know who I serve, and I know that no matter what comes against me, no matter what weapon the Bible talks about that's formed against me, it's not going to prosper because I am a child of God. I am a servant of the living God, and no matter what comes against me, I can go through this because he is with me, and if God is for me, man, who can be against me? Let's stand today as we close our message for the day.